For the hour, so I'm going to have us start that. Perfect. Welcome on behalf of Harbor Pilgrim Healthcare and Tufts. My name is Katie Andrews. I am a registered dietitian and wellness expert here today for our program, Managing Stress, Lifestyle, and Dietary Changes. So we have a quick 30 minutes together. I want to get right to this content because there's so much fantastic, valuable knowledge that I want to share. I could talk for a long time on how to manage your stress through lifestyle and dietary changes. So I wanted to highlight what I think are the most important topics and sometimes the most overlooked. So if we have not met before, it's great to have you here. As I said, I'm an expert in the wellness field. I counsel most predominantly on nutrition, but I spend a lot of time with my clients on sleep and stress as well. Those three really are kind of the triad of how I define health in my practice. So if you're only addressing one of the three elements, chances are you may not experience kind of health and wellness in the way that is as all-encompassing as it should be. So that's why we're really going to touch on all three topics today. As I said, there's a lot of information here, so buckle up. You're, of course, going to have the opportunity to revisit these slides in the recording as well. So our content for today, first, a brief understanding of stress, how it functions within the body, what its purpose is, why we have stress hormones and what they do. We'll make a connection between sleep and stress, and then we'll make a connection between sleep, stress, and nutrition. And then I actually wanted to finish with some working examples. So some SMART goals, if you're going to walk away from this presentation today and put it into your day-to-day life, what are some changes that you can make starting tomorrow, even starting this evening, if you're going to focus on sleep, that will have great impactful change on your lifestyle patterns and your overall wellness. So hold on, someone just popped a question here. Will you be sharing the presentation slides? We usually don't share the presentation slides. What I can do is offer, if you want to, the recording will be available, and you're welcome to take any pictures of the slides as I go as well. Okay, so I'll just close the Q&A so I can see. Let's start with, a second, my slides are not participating. So let's start with kind of a little bit of a Q&A for you. I want to know if this sounds something that is familiar. So let's see if this is a pattern that you may relate with in any way. You're experiencing stress or work at home. I think for most of us, that's usually the case, no matter what's going on in life. I'm finishing a home renovation right now and launching a new website. So I can tell you I'm experiencing stress at work and home, not or home. So that's a double check of the box for me. This impacts your ability to fall asleep at night. I call this kind of the elephant effect. So you get through your night, maybe you get your kids to bed, you watch a show, whatever it is, you lay down to sleep, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, the weight of the world is upon me, right? And you either kind of spiral and have trouble sleeping, or you wake up in the middle of the night and you can't fall back asleep because you're thinking about all the things that are causing you stress. This causes you to feel overtired during the day. And when we feel overtired during the day, that can lead to less than ideal food choices. So, I'm just going to grab this bag of chips, or I end up sitting and eating mindlessly at my desk because I'm feeling overly fatigued. Those poor food choices, or eating late in the evening, or both, can actually lead to lower quality sleep. There's research around the fact that poorer food choices, higher in saturated fat and sodium, less far away from what we see as a traditional Mediterranean diet, is actually associated with lower quality sleep. Lower quality sleep, we see where we're going, leads to increased levels of stress at work or home because you're tired and it's hard to do your job or parent or be a partner or handle household chores when you're tired. And so it continues. So this cycle is very, very challenging to break because one naturally leads into another and also impedes another. So let's start with kind of the triggering element that we began that list with, right? And that is stress. So first thing to know, and this is just some fun little trivia, we actually have two types of stress. So we have distress, which is the traditional form of stress that I think most of us relate to. We also have something called eustress, which is actually a positive stress. I think of it as like butterflies in your stomach or excitement. I had a very cute interaction with my oldest son this week. They had the book fair at school, which, if you remember the Scholastic Book Fair as a child, it's a very, very exciting day at school. And he was laying in bed and he was like, oh, fidgety. saying he couldn't fall asleep. And I was like, why? What is with you? He was like, I'm just so excited about the book fair tomorrow. That was a great example of eustress. He was actually having a physiological reaction to an emotion that he was experiencing. So these are hormone mediated versus emotionally driven responses. So what that means is when you experience stress, whether positive or negative, you feel it in your body. It's much more similar to fatigue or hunger than it is to excitement or happiness or sadness, right? Emotions, hormone mediated responses, these are two very different things. This is what we describe as the fight or flight response. So this is when adrenaline kicks in, you have these stress hormones like cortisol get released from the brain, and then they go out into the system of the body, and they have impacts on the immune system, the metabolic system. These stress hormones cause you to tighten your muscles, right? Your heart rate goes up, your respiration goes up, all from this triggering event. Now, sometimes that triggering event can be something quite serious, right? You're running to catch a bus, or you're, someone, kind of comes near your car in a traffic lane, something like that. A lot of the times, though, modern day stress is not triggered by a life or death event. It is, my kids are taking forever to put their shoes on in the morning, or I get an email through work that is causing me distress. So the difficulty is our body doesn't have the capability to distinguish between this stress as it used to be when it was a fight or flight response as a survival mechanism, and this stress today, which is you may feel like you're in a life or death situation, but the reality is most of our stress is triggered from everyday stressors, right? So family, interpersonal relationships, work, the stress response, that complicated hormone cortisol mediated response wasn't designed to be triggered 8 to 10 times a day. And so when I say it wreaks havoc on your body, all those systems that I talked about, immune, metabolic, heart rate, they are pinged repeatedly each time that there's a triggering event with a stress response. Now, when you had to have it for survival, that was okay, because your body was going, listen, flight is better than fight. And so by triggering the stress response, your cells actually release glucose in the bloodstream to use for immediate energy. So you're like, I can run from the saber-toothed tiger and I'm not going to risk imminent death. But when it's this type of stress response, now your body's like, wait, why do we need excess glucose right now? I don't need this. I'm just stressed because I got an email at work, right? So we had to see that our stressors have evolved, our stress response has not. And now we can start to think about, okay, well, how does this stress impact our health? Well, we fall into habits that tend to hinder our health versus benefit our health. Again, I think when we're stressed, we also don't tend to reach for the things that are best at helping us relieve the physiological stress response. So when we're stressed, we're not getting better sleep. We're not prioritizing movement or meditation or nutrition or all the things that can actually help you manage the stress that you're experiencing. This is when the benefits of personal wellness are really, really important, because as we lose sleep over our stress, we also have the side impacts of loss of immune protection, loss of memory storage, blood pressure becomes more difficult to manage. And then those hormones that actually help us process stress in a healthy way don't get to be created at the right levels because maybe we're not prioritizing our sleep. So let's look a little bit at sleep first, and then I want to look at food. So I think a lot of people connect sleep and stress with the ideas that if I'm not getting enough sleep, I feel stressed about it, and or my stressors are keeping me from being able to sleep. But there's a huge biological connection between these two things as well. So you can see, I'm not going to go through this whole complicated, diagram here, but you can see how the arrows between sleep deprivation and stress go both ways, right? If you're feeling sleep deprived, you're going to feel stressed, and vice versa. The disturbance that's caused are inability to regulate emotions, so innate immunity, the things like your white blood cells, right? The immune system that's built into your body, and then what's called adaptive immunity, which is your body's ability to adapt to whatever environmental factors impact it. So you get, cold and flu season going around, right? So your adaptive immunity is your body's ability to say like, oh, okay, we can fight these new mitigating factors. all of this is impacted when we lose sleep. And then the system kind of works going back and forth from sleep to stress. Now, how does this tie into food? And this is the part that I think is so biologically interesting. Part of our sleep process is building and creating hormones that we use in other processes during our day. Two of those hormones are called leptin and ghrelin. And if you're familiar with them, then you probably know that these are the hormones that control hunger and satiety. So it's the hormone that tells you, hey, I want to go get a snack, and the hormone that tells you, okay, I'm full, I can stop eating. I obviously can't snap as well with this hand. So when research around sleep deprivation and lack of sleep or insomnia has showed us that when we have a lack of sleep, we produce more ghrelin, so that's the hunger hormone, and we produce less leptin, that's the satiety hormone. So incredibly interesting, right? This idea that if we're lacking in sleep, we actually experience more hunger, and we lack an ability to experience satiety. So this is very directly seen in human behavior when if you have a very bad night's sleep, you're having consistently bad night's sleep, you may find like, I feel off my game in terms of my metabolic pathway. I'm hungry more often, I'm feeling less satisfied by my food, and that of course can have metabolic consequences as well. So now making this connection from meal to mood, from these changes to how we actually feel. This is the study I was mentioning right at the beginning. So this research was about, the sleep specialists, sleep is a science that there's so many rocks still to uncover. But there's a sleep center that does a lot of really fantastic research. And this was one of their studies. And it was about what would cause people to have better quality sleep. And what they found was that eating more fiber, less saturated fat, and less sugar is associated with deeper, less disturbed sleep. And that people who followed a diet that was higher in fruits and vegetables, legumes, nuts, whole grains, a lot of fiber-rich foods, and healthy fats like olive oil, lower in red and processed meat, were 1.4 times more likely to have a good night's sleep and 35% less likely to have insomnia. And you're like, how does this happen, right? So we talked about stress, we talked about sleep. Let's make this food connection and kind of bring it full circle. So a few different ways that what you eat ties into how you sleep, which therefore ties into how you experience and manage stress. So proteins, right? One of our 3 macronutrients. These have a breakdown product that's called amino acids. There are 20 amino acids. About half of them are what's called essential amino acids, which means our body cannot produce them. We have to consume them. And the other half are non-essential. Our body can kind of put building blocks together to create those amino acids. One of these amino acids is called tryptophan, which you probably are familiar with as the Thanksgiving turkey hormone that makes everybody feel sleepy. So tryptophan is actually a protein, and its role in the brain is the production of melatonin. Melatonin is the hormone, and if you're familiar with melatonin, then you know that melatonin is what triggers our body to basically manage and regulate the circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is what naturally promotes sleep. So this is why we get tired at night and we feel awake during the day, because melatonin is triggered as it starts to get dark outside and we start to feel sleepy. And it's it's the signal. It's like the shot across the bow, right? When you say to your kids 15 more minutes and you're going upstairs, that's like melatonin is saying, hey, it's time to start winding down and prepare for the natural state of sleep. So you can see how you've got a protein that produces a hormone, and that hormone leads to your sleep. So food to hormone production, closely related to stress, to sleep. Now, it's very obvious now that any type of disordered metabolic process, you're not eating enough, you're not eating the right things, can affect our ability to rest and can make it difficult to sleep. These go hand in hand. And in my big takeaway here is oftentimes we try to solve a food problem without looking at the stressors in our life and vice versa. So that's what we're going to do right now. So we talked about the foods that promote healthy sleep. Let's get a little bit more into how and why that may be. So the relationship between your gut health and your stress management is tied very closely. This is like a big communication pathway, brain to gut, it's almost like having 2 brains in your body, right? But this one does the thinking, and this one, your stomach, your gut, does the biological processing. So when you're dealing with stress, it can impact your decision to make healthy choices when you compromise those healthy choices, it then can have an effect on your gut health, which can amplify your stress. So you can see how so much of this is a cycle, one that really impacts the other. So let's talk about the state of your gut. What is it? Okay, so you're telling me I need to have a healthier gut so I can manage my stress, so I can sleep better. How do I have a healthy gut? Well, you've probably heard of what's called the gut microbiome. This is the trillions of microorganisms that are found in your gut. And it's not just bacteria, but viruses, fungi, other life forms. I always think of was that Magic School Bus, those episodes when I was a kid with Miss Frizzle, where the bus would shrink and she'd go places like the human body. And it would be like, you'd see little amoebas and little bubbles and things floating around. That's not really, they don't look like little colorful amoebas necessarily, but there is this huge dense variety of microorganisms whose purpose is to make your gut healthy so that this communication pathway from gut to brain is very clear and functional. Now, the quality and quantity of these bacteria directly influence the state of our health. I call this, well, I don't just call this, many people call this the gut-brain axis. So this massive communication pathway, almost like a super highway, that helps us control everything from weight to ADHD, anxiety, energy levels, sleep, stress, of course. What we find is that when you're less active, you have a diet that's more refined in carbohydrates and salt, lower in fiber, that there's an increased prevalence of chronic disease associated with your overall gut health. Let me explain why that is. So we've established we've got this communication pathway, right? The gut health is controlled by the diversity of the bacteria. So not just do you have a lot of one type? Do you have a whole lot of different types of bacteria? If you ever look at the back of like a yogurt box or a probiotic and it lists all the different strains of bacteria that are in there, it's exactly what I'm talking about. This populates your digestive tract everywhere from your stomach down all the way to your colon. So different bacteria populate in different areas based on the role that they play. Now, the greater variety of this bacteria leads to lower incidence of chronic diseases. This is research backed, as well as mental health conditions like anxiety and depression. Now let's start to come full circle. How do we make that bacteria healthy? Well, it has to be fed, just like any living organism. And those bacteria eat plant-based fibers from things like whole grains and nuts and beans and seeds and legumes and fermented foods. So by you eating those foods that contain these types of plant fibers and or fermentation, that feeds the bacteria in your gut, and your gut then improves the connection with your brain, which can lead to improved mood, sleep, and other lifestyle factors. So this is where I think the science gets very interesting, right? So we're constantly being bombarded with messages that certain supplements or individual foods can cure cancer, and I mean I think of things like celery juice and all the benefits that it claims to have. The reality is, certain foods can boost our serotonin levels. So this is the next step on that food mood connection. But as I said before, it's really about the variety of fiber that you get that leads to sustained higher levels of gut health. Now, let's go back to our friend tryptophan for just a second. So again, we know that tryptophan plays a role with melatonin. It also plays a side-by-side role to gut health with our improved mood. So because it's an essential amino acid, remember we have to consume it. It produces serotonin. Serotonin is our kind of mood boost hormone. So while important to have very diverse gut health, also important to ensure that you're getting protein so that you're getting foods, amino acids like tryptophan into your food system. Where do we find tryptophan? It's very convenient that some of the greatest sources, whole grains, nuts, and seeds, also are fiber-rich sources. You can also find tryptophan in protein-rich foods and dairy as well. But it is a protein that is found in 3 of our foods, the nuts, seeds, and whole grains, that also contribute to our gut health. Now, alternately, there's certain foods that can trigger anxiety-producing hormones. So these are hormones that kind of embellish, exemplify the stress response. So when you're already feeling stressed, you don't want to make that process feel even worse. And adding adrenaline is already released in the stress response. So if you find that you're sensitive to certain foods, we all have different sensitivities, but you may want to avoid some of these foods if you find you're feeling very stressed, especially late in the day. It's affecting your mood, it's affecting your sleep. A lot of these are used to help self-manage anxiety and sleep, but they can have the opposite effect as well. Okay, so how do we improve that gut health so that we can, along with consuming the right proteins, we can ensure that we are feeding our brain for the greatest level of success and the least amount of stress? Well, diversity is key. So again, remember, all gut microbiota play a different role. So while eating broccoli every day is great, I'd actually rather that you eat broccoli one day, red peppers the next day, avocado the next day. This will have a much better impact on improving the health of your gut. How to increase your fiber intake? Stick to the ground, right? Any plant-based material is going to contain fiber. So you can make a goal to eat more plants. That fiber is not consumed by the human body. It goes directly to your gut, and then it's a picnic for all those gut bacteria, and that will stimulate additional bacterial growth. So where to find fiber? There's a big fiber gap in our kind of nation, I would say, primarily because we don't generally eat a very plant-based diet. We have a diet that's very focused on animal products and or processed foods. So we don't get a lot of fiber in processed foods. In processed grains, the fiber is actually removed and the essential vitamins are added back in, but the fiber is not. So you want to make sure that you're looking for foods. Anything plant-based is going to have some fiber. People are usually surprised. Berries are very high in fiber. Why? Edible seeds. A lot of the fiber in fruits and vegetables is in the seeds and skins. So if you can consume the seeds and skins, that's a great thing. Also, lots of fiber in things like nuts, seeds, beans, legumes. If you're going to go for fiber from your grains, just be sure to check your labels. So this is a great example of a Barilla whole grain pasta with 7 grams of fiber in 2 ounces, which is probably the serving. Okay. So let's do a little bit of goal setting together, because I really want you guys to leave with something actionable that you can work on starting today. So you can always create a priority list, right? Everyone's health and wellness needs are different. So think about what you may be suffering from the most. Is it lack of quality sleep? Is it feeling overwhelmed by stress? Is it closing some of the gaps in your diet? Think of what you're motivated by. Do you like to make changes to food that's going to make you feel good? Is sleep really going to serve you better? Do you want to build immunity? And then you start to set your SMART goals from there. So this is the big factor between internal and external motivators. And this is something I learned studying behavior change theory, that it's very difficult to find success when you're only motivated by external motivators. You always need an internal motivation, right? This is why when people are told, you ask people who are longtime chronic smokers, why are they not encouraged by smoking advertisements or their doctors? Those are all external motivations. It's very difficult. Now, someone may then go to a doctor's appointment and find out, oh, they are at significantly higher risk for, heart attack or chronic heart, congestive heart failure. That may motivate them. That's more of an internal motivator. But find a internal motivator for yourself here, and let's look at what some examples of these SMART goals could be. So I will add 10 minutes of mindful meditation every day to manage stress. So a SMART goal, we all know, right? Small and specific, manageable, action-based, realistic, time-bounded, right? So it has to be something that is measurable, has to be something that has a start and end, right? You can't just say more or less. You can't say I'll be better. You have to be able to measure it. This is very specific, which is great. 10 minutes. You're not just saying, well, I'm going to try to meditate. You're saying, no, I'm going to commit to 10 minutes a day. And what's this purpose? To manage my stress. So I can look at this outcome and see if I'm finding value. You could do some alternatives here. You could do additional time. You could start at morning and night. You could do it without technology. However you think best fits you. This is a great example of a SMART goal that will lead to beneficial changes for stress management. So if you're new to meditation, there's lots of different ways in which you can do this. These are just examples of some of the apps that I really love. I've used all of them just so that I kind of know how they work. If you're new, Headspace and Calm are a great place to start. Aura is more about having a wearable device. That's a very personalized experience. Stopflow, I can tell you about the history of meditation. If you want to connect your meditation to your sleep, then Simple Habits better. And if you want to incorporate mindfulness to your meditation, I recommend 10% Happier. So these are great examples of apps that you can download, very low cost, easy to use, that can help improve and make that 10-minute meditation a little bit easier and more manageable. Okay, let's look at another potential SMART goal here. So I will be in bed without a screen by 10 p.m. every night. I will say this is my current SMART goal. I always have a SMART goal that I'm working on when it comes to health and wellness. This is my current one. I definitely feel like my sleep habits fell by the wayside, I think, over the summer, where you're a little bit more lax with kids going to bed and a little bit more casual. And I was either going to bed super late, like 11:30, which is very late for me because I'm an early riser, or I was going to bed and then I was sitting with my phone and, doom scrolling, as we do. And that can be very impactful on sleep because of the blue light that is emitted from our phones. But it also doesn't really help with managing your stress before bed. So I said, I'll be in bed every night. I brought my book up, put it next to my bed. So I'm not going like, oh, I left my book downstairs. No, I have it there ready to go. And when I see the clock go to 10 o'clock, it's time to go upstairs. I'll let myself read for maybe 20 minutes, or sometimes it's just time for sleep. Different alternatives for this, you can make weekend versus weeknight rules. So I don't hold myself to this on weekend nights. I stay up a little bit later, but by Sunday, I'm back on it. This is set to my sleep goal time. So like I said, I usually get up around 6. So this ensures that I'm getting between my 7 to 9 hours of sleep, which is what we need every night for our body to feel rested, repaired, and recovered. So make sure that if you're getting up earlier or you want to set the goal for later, you're still going to get your 7 to 9 hours. And then you can create an accompanying health sleep routine. So we're so good at creating sleep routines for our children, I find, but we kind of forget to do it for ourselves sometimes. So if that's your kind of boat that you're in, your sleep house is where you're struggling, then it's time for a little sleep makeover. Make sure that you are creating a routine that is really going to serve you. How's your environment? You need to address temperature, sound, and light. Temperature should be between 62 and about 65 degrees, no warmer. Your body likes to sleep at cold temps. Sound, white noise, fan. If you want to fall asleep to like a meditation app, that's okay. But you don't want you don't want it dead quiet, and you don't want a lot of extra background noise. And then light, dark, dark, dark. Your body likes a dark environment. So if you are opening out where you're facing where the sun's coming up, make sure you've got those blinds drawn. Setting, I can't sleep in a messy room, so it would really affect my sleep health. So I set a goal every night to ensure that I have cleaned up, tidied up, done the best that I can. A routine is always very helpful for your body. It knows what to expect. It knows what's coming next. So that versus kind of, one night I fall asleep on the couch and then the next night I go sleep in my bed. Your body wants to fall asleep in the same place every night as much as possible. And then those pre-bed actions, avoiding screens. If you really have trouble falling asleep, at least 30 minutes before bed, and that's every screen. So computer, TV, phone, you can use a Kindle. I just keep it on a low brightness. But any of these screens, digital screens that provide the blue light, are going to be impactful. All right, let's do one more before we wrap up. So SMART Goal 3, let's focus on that fiber content. So this is, I will include one new source of fiber in my meals or snacks every day, right? The goal for fiber, it's different for men and women, but it's basically between 30 and 38 grams. So if you don't think that you're getting there, then this is definitely where you want to focus to improve that gut health and have the benefits for sleep and stress. So alternatives, you could just do weekends or weeknights. You could stick to a certain meal or snack to replace. You could choose a specific comfort food that's very low in fiber, maybe to consistently swap out. So instead of potato chips, I'm always going to try some chickpea chips, right? Here are some other examples. These are easy fiber-rich snacks. So combinations of snacks are key. You want to make sure you have some protein, some healthy fat, but of course some fiber. Fiber is often overlooked when you're snacking. So you're going to get some protein and fat, for example, from the peanut butter, but the fibers from the celery. Vice versa, you're going to get fiber from the berries and protein and fat from the yogurt. So these are great. These are some of my favorite snack pairings for ensuring that you're getting all three macronutrients, but also that have a focus on fiber rich. So our final thoughts, we're right at 1:30. So I just want to close out with some thoughts. So stress is not only impacted by mental factors, but the physical factors too. So if your emotional state is challenged, remember that you can address some of the physical factors, whether that be movement or sleep or your nutrition, to help alleviate some of the stress symptoms. Sometimes stress is caused by things we can't control. And so saying, oh, I'm going to limit my stress is very challenging when you're renovating a house or when you're dealing with an ill parent or you're dealing with something with your children or something at work. So I understand we can eliminate our stress, but we can manage it better. Prioritizing sleep, key for metabolism and nutrition intake. And of course, make small changes. Focus on the little things first. You don't have to worry about big swinging changes. Those don't tend to stick, but rather small things that you can manage. I like to say control what you can change and manage what you can't change. So I want to thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you coming. We had a great crowd today. So I hope you guys really enjoyed the content. Hopefully, I'm just going to open the chat. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, if you have a question you want to pop into the chat right now, I'm happy to take it. I know most people have to jump off. Great. You're welcome. Of course. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. And hopefully we will see you for the next session and have a great rest of your day.